All right. Hello and welcome to B&E Presents the Trend. This is episode 16, titled Launch or Relaunch a Wildly Profitable Healthcare Staffing Firm. I am Alviana Brewster, the founder and CEO of Black Nurse Entrepreneurs, also known to you as B&E. We are the premier networking organization for Black nurses who are interested in launching, in building, and growing their entrepreneurial endeavors. In this episode, we have a special guest, Ms. Nicole Caillier. Nicole has been widely recognized as a leading authority in the healthcare staffing industry for both emerging and established firms. She's made intellectual investments into some of the most notable firms. She is often referred to as the queen of staffing because of her cutting edge approach, laser focused precision, and innate ability to resource leading edge business strategies for her clients. Nicole is the founder and CEO of Launch, Grow, Thrive, the premier consulting firm for nurse entrepreneurs. In 2005, she founded Quality Medical Staffing, a privately held healthcare staffing firm. Under Nicole's leadership and hands on approach, the organization tripled in size and expanded nationally within 36 months of inception. In 2018, Nicole expanded her portfolio to include private business development and intellectual investments in the development of over 150 healthcare staffing firms throughout the country. Without further ado, I present to you the queen of healthcare staffing, Miss Nicole Caillier. Hello, Nicole. How are you doing today?
Hi, Alviana. I'm doing well. Thank you.
Great, great, great. Thank you for joining us today. And it is my honor to see you. You're looking fantastic.
Thank
So I want to, for all of our listeners and people who are possibly watching our YouTube channel, go ahead and tell us a little bit about your background, Nicole.
Absolutely. First, I want to thank you for creating the space and providing the opportunity to meet for me to be a part of your platform and this amazing community you've created. So thank you. And yes, I'd love to share kind of the journey, if you will, to all of what you just heard. And so I got into healthcare honestly about 20 years ago. Most people don't know I started as a CNA prior to going to nursing school and becoming a licensed nurse. I spent some time doing that, several years, and then moved into nursing administration, which I thought was the next level of success for me and kind of how I would accelerate my nursing career. That was very short lived. And so I remember having a new position and being really excited about a promotion I had received. And about 2 or 3 weeks into the promotion, I went, this is not it. And it was crazy because the people around me were going, Nicole, you have everything, right? You got the office, you have the nice furniture, you have this highly coveted position. But inside, I was kind of going, this is just a place I'm passing through. I knew it wasn't permanent. And so with that being said, I had been promised by the facility when they recruited me that I could have control over my schedule. And so I thought, well, I'm going to take them up on that offer and do my work in the time allotted and then run my business on the side, like start a business on the side, because that had been a long-standing dream of mine. And so when I went to take them up on that offer, they fired me. In short, that's what happened, right? I went in to take them up on that offer. About an hour later, I see my supervisor come in with paperwork. She's not smiling, so I know that it's probably not a conversation that I would look forward to. And she proceeded to let me go. Now, fast forward, I totally get it. At that time, I was generating revenue for the facility, and so I was dealing with a lot of compromising information. And so I totally understand it. But in that moment, it felt like the worst day of my life. So I literally went from wanting to start a business to I have to start a business. And what's crazy, Alviana, most people would have thought, well, you're a nurse, just go get another job. But that had a great impact on me because I thought I never want to put myself in a position again where someone owns my time, my freedom, and is controlling my income. And so even though I had just got fired, even though I was crying as they were walking me out of the building, pretty much like a criminal. I still knew that day that I was never going to put myself in that position again. And that was actually the beginning of what everyone sees now.
Gotcha. Very, very good. You know, you bring up a very interesting point, and I want you to expand on it just a little bit. For instance, I have a couple of friends right now at the moment. They are kind of stuck against the wall. Like, I'm sick of this. I'm tired, but I don't really want to just quit. You know, we always think that we need to have a strategic plan when we're quitting. We got to have all our ducks in a row. But I tell you one thing, the times that I've quit, just quit and had to kind of just figure it out have actually turned out to be the better times in my life. And so with you, you just said that boom, I was fired on the spot. I wasn't necessarily prepared to fully jump feet first into business. So how does that feel? What kind of encouragement would you give somebody who's kind of in that position right now on the fence of like, I don't know whether I should quit or not, but that's something that you had to kind of maneuver through?
Right. That's a great question. I would love to sit here and say, and I mean, I definitely don't want to convey it was just an easy thing, right? And that probably, if it was up to me and I was left to my own intellect or wisdom back then, I probably would not. It may have taken a little bit longer. And so I certainly want to um, I want to convey that that's like not the norm. But then that is where I see the greatest reward, and especially amongst people that I consider to be successful and leaders, it is kind of that leap of faith that propels you. Because the reality is, there's always going to be something. And so if we're left to think about the perfect time to do these things, in reality, the perfect time is not going to come. And so fortunately for me, in that situation, I was kind of forced into it and had the wherewithal to say, this is the time is now. The way that I mentor and I teach and I train, obviously you want to make wise decisions. I don't tell people to do things that are impulsive, but you should always be planning and then setting some definite date, goals, some place that, you know, when I get here, this is my time to go as best as possible. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it's something that I've also kind of I call it the expiration date. I say, what is your expiration date? And what date do you kind of have in your mind? You don't even have to share with me, but what date do you have in your mind that, you know, this is my expiration, this is my exit, I'm done. So yeah, absolutely. It makes perfectly good sense.
Yeah.
And you go ahead. Uh-huh.
Yeah, if I could expand on that a little bit. And it's not the date is great. And that's one part of it, but it may not be a date. On the day that I got up from that desk and turned the paperwork in that said, "Hey, I want to go part-time," it was a feeling. It wasn't a date. I knew that I had come to a crossroads and that was a day of decision. And so for some people, it may not be that physical date that we can put on a calendar, but it's an internal knowing this is it. And I
Yeah.
feel like it there, that is more powerful than anything we can put on a calendar, because that's the place where you really are ready to take that faith step and it's no turning back.
I agree. I agree. So
Mhm.
whenever this happened to you, did you immediately go in and start a staffing firm, or were you starting another business at that time?
No, I actually was already doing contract work on the side for a staffing company. And so I continued doing that. And then I had already kind of started thinking about healthcare staffing. I had some information, I had a few pieces of information, but it really wasn't coming together. And so that incident gave me the momentum to figure out how to make it all work. But there was no contingency plan per se, in terms of already having another business, or I didn't have a savings account. I wasn't married back then. I mean, I was just out there, right? And so the first business actually was the healthcare staffing firm.
How did you kind of get things together so quickly? Because I hear a lot of people say, well, I don't have this, I don't have that, I can't get started because I don't know where to start, or I don't have the resources, the money. So how would you say that you kind of, hey, I got to get this going. So I got to learn this, I got to study this, I need a mentor. What did you do to kind of get the ball rolling?
Right. Yeah. First, I just want to say want to and have to are two different things,
Hmm.
and they create two different sets of action. I went from literally in one day wanting to I have to.
Hmm.
At that time, I was the primary parent for my son, and I knew in 2 weeks, I'm going to get my final paycheck. There is no knight in shining armor, not back then, there is now. But there was nobody, there was no savings account, none of that. And so that makes a huge difference in the level of commitment when you're fully aware that you want to honor I wanted to honor what I wanted to do, honor my dreams, honor my goals, but I also did not want to compromise and put myself back in a situation where I was handing over my time, my freedom, and my income again. And so I think just having to made me get really serious and intentional. And so in the beginning, my plan, Alviana, was I'm a nurse. I'm going to work my assignments. I'm really just going to cut the middleman out. And
Hmm.
so that was my plan. Obviously, that only worked for a certain amount of time. And I certainly don't teach that now. There's so many more resources and ways to structure this, but I didn't know what I didn't know. And so for the first couple of weeks, I spent a lot of time working, like actually working for within my own agency. I called my sister to see, she's also a nurse, to see if she'd fall for it. And she did, right? I'm like, I need help. And so in a short time, this went from ideal to reality. And in just a couple of months, I had already replaced my income for my two nursing jobs in the first 3 months. And so I knew
Wow.
that it was viable. And I knew that it was something that if stewarded correctly, that could be a long-standing and rewarding as well as profitable.
Gotcha. So with staffing, you know, obviously right now it's a pretty hot topic, I'm assuming, because a lot of people need staff right now. The hospitals are overran. There's a lot of lack of resources and things. So, would you say that this is a pretty good time to get into staffing? If a nurse is interested in starting a staffing firm, is this a good time for them to do it?
Definitely. Staffing, I think a lot of individuals aren't aware, and I certainly wasn't aware prior to getting into the staffing industry, of the volume of staff that facilities use to help continue their continuity of care for their residents or patients. I think something like over 90% of healthcare organizations use supplemental staffing in some capacity. And so that was pre-pandemic world. Obviously, in a post-pandemic world, those numbers have probably increased. And we study the economy and staffing trends and things like that. And there were already projections from now through 2027 with the addition of new medical facilities, new hospitals, obviously, and also a lot of nurses making the decisions to go into other areas or maybe not live out their career in a traditional nursing setting. It's creating an even, the imbalance is becoming substantial.
Hmm.
And so when I say that, I mean that there was already a deficit, and now that deficit or that gap is widening. And so you find that a lot of healthcare organizations are becoming more reliant on supplemental staffing even than they were before.
Gotcha. Okay. So, this is a question that the B&E audience asks quite a bit, but I always get, who can start a business?
Right.
Is staffing something that a LPN can start? Do you have to have a BSN? Do you have to have an MSN? Who can start a staffing firm?
Really, honestly, in most states, most geographies, you do not have to be involved in healthcare at all to start a healthcare staffing firm. Honestly, that was one of the motivating factors for me as well in developing my first staffing firm. I was doing contract work for another agency. I reached out to them to ask them a question. And in conversation, they shared with me that they really like literally had no idea what I was talking about. And I thought it was strange. And it was, I think it was more like an ethics question just related to nursing and something I was being asked to do at a facility. And to my surprise, no one knew what I was talking about. And so then I started thinking, I started doing some research because in my mind as a nurse, I always thought, oh, you have to be a nurse to do this. That's the obvious, right? But after doing research, I realized that in most places, you do not have to be a healthcare professional. You do not have to be a nurse. It's really considered in some areas to be a general employment agency type business. Obviously, that's not applicable everywhere, but more often than not, you don't have to be a nurse.
Okay. So I think for our community, since we are a unique community of healthcare providers, I think it adds just that extra layer to it. For instance, like there's people in the community that start group homes. You don't necessarily have to be a nurse to start a group home, but we bring in our expertise and our knowledge to be able to help those clients out. So I think that's probably the same with staffing as well, since we've been staffed before in healthcare facilities. So we know that inner working of kind of how that, you know how it is. You work in the floor and there's no staff sitting there, and you're like, we need help. So you can bring your expertise and your knowledge and utilize that in your business. Would you agree with that, Nicole?
Absolutely. That has definitely been our unique advantage from day one. The duality of understanding from the nursing side of things what it feels like when you don't have adequate staff, how the facility is being impacted, and then also understanding from the facility standpoint what happens. And for me, I've had the privilege of working in the where we're generating revenue for the nursing department and understanding how that affects not only the residents, the patients, but the facility's bottom line. And then as the CEO and agency owner, understanding the importance of being able to marry the two, the needs of the facility and also the demands of the nurses, what the nurses are actually looking for and being able to give them options. And so I would say, I would totally agree with you. And that was one of my reasons for developing the mentorship and training opportunities, because I realized that while as healthcare professionals, we are doing most of the actual work, we really do not have authentic ownership in the industry that we serve so graciously. And so I just thought that this would be a great opportunity to help level the playing field, but also it works to the advantage of the facilities and the nurses because you do have the understanding of both both sides.
Exactly, that part. All right, perfect. So you mentioned mentorship. You've come into our community, and first of all, I want to thank you because you've brought in so much value, not only from a staffing standpoint, but just from just personal development, being able to encourage our community to live out their dreams, shoot for their best, whatever that may be. But you've done an excellent job, and I've had conversations with other people. You have followers within our community, okay? And so, yes, I've had conversations with those people before, and they have really sung your praises, saying, first of all, Alviana, thank you for allowing us to be connected with her in your community, because the type of advice and the knowledge and the expertise that she has brought into my life, I've been able to do XYZ, or I've been so successful this past month. I've had a lot of people to share those testimonials with me. So I want to thank you, first of all, but I also want you to speak on how exactly do you work with nurses on getting their staffing firms up and going?
Absolutely. So we have curated a process. It's actually the same process that I used to launch my healthcare staffing firm and just refined it over the years. And we continue to refine it. And so we bring them through 4 key components, if you will, legal, administrative, operational, and then execution. And in each one of those phases, it helps with developing not only the healthcare staffing firm, but also developing them as business owners. And so what I've seen, I'm actually going into my 16th year of business now, and our results have been really substantial. And I tell everyone, it's not just because I understand healthcare staffing. I've made just as many investments in understanding business. And so our program actually combines the two so that they don't just have a healthcare staffing firm, but they are, which most people think is just having a contract and having a facility. And that is not a plan for sustainability and long-lasting success. And so we're really intentional about teaching them about business as well, how to grow, when to grow, how to leverage their firm, what steps to take, because you just can't read, the label when you're inside of the box. And so we've developed these programs to help individuals who are emerging entrepreneurs in the healthcare staffing space.
How would you say a person in our community could utilize staffing in order to impact their community or pour back into their community?
Well, I think that's a layered question in that I think the first objective for anyone would be stabilizing themselves. And so it sounds really sexy when we say, oh, I want to do this for the community. I want to change the legacy. And I'm always like, let's stop and let's get you settled first and stabilized. And so sometimes I prematurely see people with a mission that is yet to be had, meaning get yourself to the point where you can give and you've built the dexterity, you've built the business before you even consider. Like, it would be great for me to sit here and tell you guys, oh, when I opened in 2005, I had this. No, I didn't. I was just trying to eat. I need to take care of me and my son. And so that was the greatest impact, because that directly affects me. It affects my legacy. And then at some point, and other people are impacted by that as well. And so the impact of being able to create jobs, the impact of being able to help facilities stay open and meet their ratios and have safer nurse-patient ratios. So there's so many aspects of, you are serving and you are giving, but the first order of business is stabilizing yourself. And then after that, and that's not what we're traditionally taught. And then after that, your mission can expand. So you add on new opportunities, you expand your reach, you create more jobs, you serve the facilities in a higher capacity. And then that just continues to grow over time. In hindsight, now I look and go, wow, there's so much contribution in all of these areas. But the reality is, none of this would have been sustainable if we weren't okay first. And so I always tell people, make yourself the mission first, so that you can have long-lasting, sustainable success, and also the resources to be able to invest in the things that you want to. So our mission isn't just about jobs and entrepreneurs. Our mission also impacts some of the organizations that we support through different avenues of philanthropy and things like that. And so, but it all starts with stabilization of yourself, and then those opportunities to support and invest and be a resource to the community, to others, will automatically come.
Amen. I like that. I'm glad that you actually spoke about it that way. I think it's very important that we take the time to invest in ourselves first. It's very hard. I have to break it down for nurses in nurse terms. I say, look, we only get 250 cc's of energy a day, right? And if all of that is gone elsewhere, but your cup is empty, it's very difficult to be able to help anybody else when you yourself are not full, when you have not taken the time out to either invest in yourself or just care for yourself, however way that looks. And as nurses, that's our thing. We're givers, we're nurturers, we're taught that it's about the patient and things like that. But it's very hard to care for anybody else or be successful in any other manner when you yourself are struggling. So I'm glad that you spoke about it and spoke about it that way. And then quite naturally, once you're kind of good, then it does have that trickling down effect towards other people. So yes, I appreciate you for saying it that way. Now Here's something else that want you to speak about. Um, you said this is your 16th year of business, and I've heard you during just some other conversations talking about, this is what you see right now, but I've had in 2008, whenever the economy crashed, I had this that we went through. Or in this year, we had to make this pivot. So a lot of people right now are having to make some very tough decisions and pivot in their businesses. Whatever stage they are in, they're going to have to come to a realization that pivoting in your business is going to probably have to happen at some point in time. Can you speak on that?
Absolutely. I think a healthy business will always have to pivot a help because your business will go through every cycle. I've talked about business and compare business to the cycles of the seasons. So the winter, spring, summer, and fall. Winter will come. What I see most entrepreneurs do is not prepare for winter because there's this whole movement on social media that it's all good. Just take pictures and post things and it's exciting and we're all winning. And that's not true. That's not true. I promise you. It's not true. And so many people have bought that myth. So when winter does actually come, they think they don't pivot because they think this is it for me. This means I shouldn't be doing it. This is a sign. Maybe I shouldn't have did this. And so not realizing the season that they're in could be detrimental because if you realize, then that's when you make the pivot. So awareness, I think, is the first part of it. Understanding that every business, including mine, right? We go through these, it's very cyclic. We go through these things continually. What we are aware of now is it's coming, right? And so we have to change our perspective about the way we look at it. When I lost everything in 2007, I literally thought I was going to die. I kid you not. I'm not exaggerating. I probably wanted to die because I had told everyone, I'm going to start this staffing firm. And I was so committed and we had done extremely well and climbed this mountain. And then it felt like we just fell down and we fell down in front of everybody. And so now I have the same colleagues who I said, oh, I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this. Now I have them laughing at me. That period for us lasted 9 months. It wasn't short-lived. And so I remember the day that I had told my husband, I said, and I rarely say this, but I told him, I said, I'm done. I'm going to quit tomorrow. And he said, okay. And he said, are you sure? I said, yeah, it's been 9 months. I've prophesied, I've declared, I've prayed, I've done the work, I've done everything I know how to do, and I don't know how to do anything else. I don't. And so I really had got to the point where I was going to quit. And I remember telling him that, and he said, I'll support you with whatever you want to do. And that night, he said a very simple prayer. He said, God, we need your help. He put his hand on my back. I woke up that morning and I didn't know that like something had happened to me. I had no idea. Something happened to me. And we were re-energized. And we got clear about what exactly needed to be done. And we did that. The very next year, in the middle of a recession, is when we went national. So I say that to say that there are people who are in those storms or in those winters. And if you don't have the right perspective, here it is. I was ready to give it all up because I had got tired of standing. But if I would have done that, then I would not have had the opportunity to think through and develop the business acumen needed to run a national healthcare staffing firm. And now, of course, to mentor and serve and train so many others. And so even though it doesn't feel good, if you know that you're in a place and you've had success, sometimes it is about stepping back and not being so emotionally attached, but saying, what is the next? What do I need to do? What adjustment do I need to make? When COVID, the pandemic first started, there are like a lot of little, family eating places that I really like to go to. And so a lot of them were closed because they just couldn't weather the storm. But then I went to Chick-fil-A. And when I went to Chick-fil-A, I saw the line around the building. It was closed on the inside. There were people outside. They had made this path, how to go in, how to get your food. And they had 4 people outside taking orders. They had 3 or 4 lanes. It was going through. They were taking names. They pivoted. From what I understand, their numbers they've done better in the pandemic with no dining area than they were doing before. And so when you think of organizations that last, they all have had to pivot. We're all going through the same thing, but we're not all going through it the same way.
That's right.
And so I share those stories just to provide insight, because the one thing that I think causes me the most grief and pain is when I see an entrepreneur giving up on their business because nobody told them, I have winners too. I had a winner too. I haven't always won. I've lost big. But it's what I do in that loss that is the catalyst to what happens next. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. And I thank you. Another thing that I hear a lot of people say, well, I just don't want to start my business because there are 500 other staffing firms already going. So what about that, Nicole? With you running your staffing business, the fact that there are so many other staffing firms, does that even bother you? What do you think about it?
There's only one me.
There's only one you.
Quality. Absolutely. And so the unique advantage is I'm the best at what I do here. And so I'm not necessarily worried about that. I look at churches are on every corner, and normally one in every one of them. And so the way that I respond to that is G. Bryant, he's a multimillionaire. He's a fitness guru out of Atlanta. And he said, if you think the market is saturated, it is. And so there's a belief system for me that when people think about saturation and things like that, to me, those are more connected with thoughts of lack. I always think about, where are the clients? Who are we serving? Where is our client avatar? Who are the people that need us, and how do I get to them? And so I'm not necessarily concerned. And honestly, we have requests that remain unfilled each and every day, whether it be myself, my mentees, or some of the large healthcare staffing firms, which let me know that they're not 100% filled. Mm-hmm. And so as long as there is a need, there's an opportunity. And so I'm not intimidated by any healthcare, by the volume of healthcare staffing firms as well, because we're all doing different things. We should be. We're bringing something unique. And when your client sees you to be a solution with your healthcare staffing firm, they're going to respond to that.
That's right.
Right.
That's right. I say that too. I'm like, there may be 2,000 business coaches out there in the B&E community, but there's a reason why somebody was attracted to me or attracted to you. There's a reason why they come to you. And it may not necessarily even be what business that you're in. Sometimes people are attracted to you because of how you handle them, how you talk to them, how you respect them, how you empower them. So what I would encourage our listeners to understand is business is not always just about business. We all bring a uniqueness, a gift to anything that we do, because that's how God has created us. We're created to be unique and different and to stand out from one another. So even if we're all doing medical staffing, just like you said, each one of us is going to bring something very unique that the other person just simply can't do, just because we're not each other. And so that's a very true statement. What else do you have coming up on the plate for you?
Oh, wow. So this year we are wrapping up our semi-private mentorship sessions. We have spent the last probably almost 24 months now helping emerging staffing entrepreneurs throughout the country to launch and relaunch their firms. We're moving into a new season. And that season is going to elevate the conversation around business. I want to start a new dialogue that includes other businesses as well, simply because, to the point I made earlier, I see so many phenomenal entrepreneurs who have amazing skill sets, but
Mhm.
they lack the business dexterity and acumen to really bring their business to the level and degree that it should. I think it was Miss Holland. I wish I could remember. But she said, your business will always rise or fall to the level and degree of information that you have. And
Mm.
so a lot of people just need information, and realizing that we're kind of shifting and making a commitment to kind of facilitate some of those conversations and explore opportunities to help individuals really understand business.
Thank you. Yeah, we people definitely need it because a lot of people really see the beauty part of it. Oh, I want to be a nurse boss because she's made her own schedule and she every time I look, she looks happy and refreshed and she's on the beach somewhere and don't really understand what it takes or what goes behind the scenes for that. It's just like, and I always compare the two. It's just like with nursing. I've had people, I could be sitting there at the nurse's station. And at one time I had a person that was an ancillary helper walk up to me and she says to me, she says, I want to be a nurse because all y'all do is sit there at the computer all day. Y'all don't do anything. And I was like, I was like, if you only knew how much how much stuff, how much stress, how much responsibility. I don't take it lightly and I'm not complaining about it, but there is a lot to that picture. So oftentimes people will see the beautiful part, you're looking good today, you're looking refreshed and relaxed, but don't really understand what it takes to get to that part in business. And business is totally different from being an employee. Is it not?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Even I'll say this, I even see entrepreneurs, solopreneurs that still don't realize that they are a high paid employee for themselves. Those are two different things. And so I do think that in some instances, a pretty picture has been painted about getting to the beach, right? And the selfies that you see and the cars. And I'm very intentional about not showing anything like that. And if you go through any of my profiles or anything, there is not probably one instance where I've showed you something of material substance, and that's very intentional, because what I want to do is not entertain. I think a lot of people are entertained without realizing it, and what we need to do is be educated. And so platforms like this obviously are extremely important in facilitating that education. But yeah, it's a journey. It's a journey. And so most people don't realize, like they say all the time, right? I get people who say, oh, well, that's not affordable. And I'm like, you know, the truth is, I never strive to be affordable. I'm effective. And that effectiveness comes from the sleepless nights, from the 2 years that I didn't get to pay myself because I paid my staff, from the sacrifices that I made within my own family, the trips I didn't take back then. All of my colleagues were going on vacation and posting these things on Facebook and flying around the country. And I was at work. I was at work, working more at that time, than I was even when I was a nurse. And so the path to getting to that place that I call the promised land is not always pretty. I can say that it's worth it, but it's not pretty. And so I think we just got to start telling the truth. Like, you know what? Sometimes I wanted to quit. I laid on the floor in my closet on several occasions and said that I'm not getting up. I'm not doing it no more. I don't want to do it. If I can share this, probably the first year in business, I remember this CNA that worked for me. She was she was just so sweet. And she worked for me, and I had a really bad day, Alviana. It was like 8 p.m. at night. I was still in the office, and it was like payroll that day. And it was like all of my thoughts just started crashing down, right? All these negative things. I just started having a really bad, I was having a really bad or hard time rather. And so I remember thinking, I'm sitting on the floor, I'm crying, and I'm thinking, this is it. I'm not doing this anymore. I'm just going to go back and get my job. Like, seriously. And she walks in to drop off her timesheets or something, and I'm crying. And she said, Miss Nicole, what's wrong? And I said, I'm sitting on the floor in the office, and it's late. She says, what's wrong? And I said, I just don't know if I can't do this anymore. I'm tired. I can't do this anymore. This is too hard. And she looked at me. She had huge brown eyes. And she looked at me, and her eyes started watering. And she said, Miss Nicole, if you quit, what am I going to do?
That part. Mm-hmm.
And we're in the office crying, right? I'm pretty sure HR, like that's not in the HR manual, crying with the employees, right? But we're crying, but it was the first time that I ever accepted the responsibility and the reward. And so quitting has never really been an option. It's just been something to say out of frustration. But we've got to start being a lot more transparent. And I lead with those stories because I want people, when they get into the real world, the mentees are the people who are trusting us to walk this journey with them. I don't want them to be shocked. I want them to be prepared because winter is going to come. But if you already understand that, and you've educated yourself and you know how to prepare, you can get through a winter season when you've already prepared for it.
That's right. That's so true. That's why, look, back when I was a young person, my father, he used to would go and he would hunt deer, and they would process it and put it in the freezer for the winter, so
Yeah.
that we would have a lot of meat later on. And so it literally is about that preparation, because we know that eventually it's going to get cold and we're not going to want to go out and get food and stuff, but we're going to need to have that. So let's go ahead and plan for, you guys have aunties and grandmothers who did a lot of paring and pickling and stuff, preparing for the winter season, canning, things like that. So really and truthfully, again, for me, business is a lot about how our lives are. How do we get through those difficult times in our lives? Do we toss in the towel and give up and just say, I can't do it in this marriage, or I can't do it in this job, or nursing school is too hard? Or do we buckle up? Do we pray about it? Do we find support? And do we trail right on through it? And business is the same exact way. So I appreciate you for saying that. And thanks for making me tear up too, because I'm over here all choked up. I'm like, golly, I'm gonna need some tissues after a while. But with you saying that, I think about it sometimes too. When I talk to people that I'm mentoring, I talk to them about that very same thing. And I tell them, I said, following your purpose is so incredibly important. Doing what you're called to do, even in the tough times, is important, because I look at the B&E community and I think about, if I had have told God, this is too hard, I don't have time, I can't do it, I don't know anything about social media, I don't know anything about business. If I had have said those excuses and not tried to invest the time in myself, I think about all of the different people that I would have impacted in maybe an indirect way, that they may not have started their businesses. And like you said earlier, you've met a lot of people within the group that have become very successful just based off your knowledge. And so it's like, my contribution back into the group is to help you guys, and you guys have helped other people. So we're continuing this process of growing each other out, but we can't give up and say, I don't know how to do this, or I can't do this, and then that's it, because that very decision right there impacts all thousands and thousands of people down the line.
Absolutely. 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 So when you think about the responsibility, and the rewards are sweet, like, I don't want to paint this picture like, oh, it's just hard, because it's not, right? It's not. But the responsibility, when you accept that, and what you said about purpose, is hugely important. And that is why there's a lot of rhetoric about, oh, the haters, the copycats, and this thing. Like, if you've been called and assigned to do something, it does not matter who else is doing it and how they're doing it. And so there's something about authenticity that when you're truly authentically walking in the space that you've been divinely created to hold, and you're doing that with authentic, it's no hater, it's nothing that can come against you in that space. And so I want to say this, and I say this, these are just my thoughts. Someone was asking me about the results. Nicole, this is incredible. How are you guys doing this? And it is, right? We set out to launch 100 firms throughout the country. We said we were going to do it in 2018. Everyone was going, she's crazy. How is she going to do this, right? And now we're actually closer to 200, and some of those now being multi-million-dollar firms in just a short amount of time. And so what we were talking about is authenticity. And when you're authentically in your place, you also carry a level of authority. And that's something that swiping a post and swiping a file, you can't get that authority through just reposting something. So I think if we realize that, we would want to stay in our lanes, our respective, because that's the sweetest spots for us. And so I think of all the success, I think the greatest success for me has been learning who I am, but also learning who I am not.
Mhm. And that comes through a lot of trial and error, a lot of experiences, a lot of possibly downfalls, because you,
Yeah.
you actually learn a lot when your back is up against a wall. And I actually just finished reading Damon John's book, Power of Broke. And he was talking about how powerful actually being broke is. When
It
you're
is.
broke and you don't have any other option but to excel, then you will get it done. You will find a way. And sometimes people get it twisted. It's not necessarily monetary brokenness. Sometimes our mindset, our mentality, sometimes we're emotionally broken. But in those moments, giving up is not an option.
That's right.
Giving
That's
up's not an option. I
that's
thank you. I thank you again for coming into our community. Another thing about your presence in our community is how you so willingly help people out and give a lot of advice and information. And I remember um, towards the beginning when you came into the B&E community and you were doing some live videos. And at that time, I remember a lot of your live videos, you were kind of breaking things down from a numbers standpoint. And I remember looking and I was like, okay, I'm gonna need to pay a little bit more close attention to her because I like this message and I like what she's saying. And I've never thought about staffing, but what she's teaching are concepts that don't necessarily have a lot to do with staffing. They're general business, great concepts. And you are breaking down staffing, like I said, from a monetary standpoint. I want you to speak a little bit without you don't have to get into extreme numbers and stuff, but I want to give people a sense of, we've already talked about the difficult times in business, but I want to give people a sense of how staffing can be very lucrative for people if they stick to it, do the processes, and work it consistently.
absolutely. So I think that staffing has a dual reward, and I say this all the time: impact and income as well, because you get to affect and impact so many people. But for the sake of our conversation and just speaking to the rewards, for me, this has been our bank. And so when I started, there were not any resources. There was not anyone who was going to give me a loan. In fact, I've never had a grant or a loan until today. So I had that the power of broke type journey. Like, I've got to figure out how to do this, right? And so obviously that's been refined over the years. But even in that process, I realized that the importance of being able not to make money, but to create money. And so for this has been a path to teaching me. This was the catalyst to create. And I always tell people, this is my own bank. I don't think you understand. So there are other things that we've been able to do because of the success that we've had in the healthcare staffing space. And so we have built an organization that has done comfortably seven figures over and over again. And there are some staffing firms that are hitting those numbers as well, people and really increasing their own earning power. And so it's not just about, oh, this is my passion. I'm huge also about, in order to sustain your passion, it has to have profit. And that's actually not one of my lessons. That's one of the lessons that my husband taught me. When we got married, I was already a year and something in the business, almost 2 years. And he's like, what are you doing? Like, this is nice, but in order for this to be sustainable, you've got to have more consistency, more revenue, and things like that. And so I've been educated over the years about the importance of creating that wealth and being able to be your own bank. And so that is also one of the reasons that we've been able to be successful. If I could, Alviana, speak to what you said about Damon John, because this is for the people who have excuses that I love. Okay, so I just want to make sure to serve people who are saying right now, like, I don't know if I could do this. I don't have the money and all of this. Okay. So I've talked about doing this as a single mom, a single parent, basically, and not having the resources and all of that. Even now, a lot of times people will tell themselves that, well, she's starting another business. Obviously, she has the resources to do that and all of that. And
Now,
yeah.
all right.
So
So go ahead.
about a year and a half into my business, I got married, and thankfully my husband came in and kind of talked to me about the importance of the financial piece of the business. He's like, this is great, right? I still had that nurse mentality, the nurse paradigm, thinking, I just want to serve people. I want to help people. And he's like, no, this will not be sustainable if you do not have the ability to make it wildly profitable. And so that's one of the things that I like to communicate as well. There is a ton of financial reward, but you've got to set yourself up to get there.
Gotcha. Um, one thing I really like about you guys, as a team, and I
Mhm.
think it's very important for people to understand. And I know, m- some of us are married, some of us are not. I myself am not married. However, I have an awesome support system and my little own team that's around me, and I can bounce ideas off of them, and they help me during those kind of tough times, or when I'm kind of indecisive. They help me to weave and navigate through some of the decisions that I make. And so one thing that I can really admire about you guys is that you really seem to be doing business, not only your marriage, but your business together as a team. How important would you say that it is important to have that support system available around you as you're navigating the business waters?
It is very, very important. Very important. Prior to me, and he actually was a friend of mine before. And I'll just say that one of the reasons that we got married, one of the many reasons, was I knew him before and he had always encouraged me. And I thought, he's always into, like, when I start talking about business and different things. And that was different because most people, unfortunately, don't know how to support us, or they're not at a place where they could. So for me, it seemed very awkward. Like, he's always uplifting and encouraging me and holding me accountable. And so in that time when we had kind of lost communication, we weren't in touch that much, and I had started the business, I would long to talk to him. And I understand now the reason was because I needed that support system. I needed somebody that I could be transparent, authentic, and just vulnerable with, and telling them how I feel. And I think I've had the luxury of having that around me the entire time that I've been in business. I've had friends, family, him as well, that have always been not only sounding boards, but also people that just catch me when I fall and consistently remind me of who I am. And they have the purest intentions and really hold the space sometimes when I can't.
Mhm. Yeah, the support system, I don't think people really uh, think about it kind of when they get started. They just want to get started. I want to get out there to the beach. So however way y'all can get me to the beach and out of the hospital is what I want to do.
Yes.
But again, there's a process, there's a step to that. And part of that process is having people in your corner, because it's not always going to be rosy. There are going to be some challenging times. And sometimes you need to see things from a different perspective. And oftentimes those people will bring, hey, did you think about this? Or I don't know if you want to do that because of that. So yeah, it's crucial. I don't know if you saw it, but we had a person in our B&E community the other day that posted a picture, she and her spouse, and then a couple of the other nurses with their spouses. They all went out to eat. And
Wow.
it was a beautiful post, because what it showed was Black love at its essence, of which I absolutely love to see us together. But it also showed how many people in the B&E community have that support system, that strong person that they lean on. And a lot of people posted their picture. So I'm waiting on your picture to be posted
Oh,
too, okay? You got to find that post. But not only did they post their picture, but they also put a little caption, we've been married for 15 years, but we've been business partners for 14 years of that, or whatever. And so it was really nice and refreshing to see that image, that strong Black family being able to go into business together and be thriving together. So definitely, you have to understand, Nicole, that you guys are the example, what I consider to be the example. So as I go about these waters and I'm navigating, and one day I'll probably be married too, but I'm also going to be looking for that partner that's going to be supportive of me in my entrepreneurial endeavors as well. Not just a marriage, but that partnership that's there. So you're an example for our community.
thank you. Thank you. And it's taken a while it took us a while to work out what it was and prioritizing. So we're building Team Caillier, meaning our family is our first order of business. And then there's different vehicles and expressions to help us reach our goals. But we always go back to, how does this affect Team Caillier? How does it affect that business? And so it's been a wild ride, to say the least, but I have enjoyed every moment of it. And I realize what a gift that is. And I do wish that for everyone.
Mhm. What else would you like to say to our community?
I think ultimately the thing that I see and I say right now, and I'm just so passionate about, is that you have to start. When we opened Alviana, you were talking about like what kind of prompted that first step. And honestly, for me, it was me being naive in a sense. Like, I didn't know. I just knew, hey, I don't want anybody to walk in and escort me out the building again. And so it's now or never. And now I'm grateful that I had that um, naivety at that point in life. But so often I meet people who are in much better circumstances, who have the savings account, they have the family support, or in some instances, maybe they don't, and they're still stalling. And so I'd like to tell people, what you see now when you hear all of these things and all of these accolades, all you hear is one thing, and that was a decision I made in 2005. That's it. I'm not a god or a guru. I'm just possibility and potential. And I think that's what my story represents, how that one decision has impacted now so many areas of not only my life, but other people's life as well. So I just would like to pose them the question as well. How many people are being impacted by the decision that you're making or not making in this very moment?
That's right. That is so true. That is so true. Um, how can we get a hold of you?
So the best way to get a hold of me is, we actually launched our staffing website, which is launchmystaffingfirm.com. And if you'll go to the contact page, you can certainly fill the contact form out and our team will get you pointed in the right direction. From that website, you also can click on any of our social links as well if you want to connect through via social media.
Okay, and I'll also have that her contact information available in our biography section of our podcast, so it'll be there as well. Um, you have any final thoughts?
I don't. Just thank you for having me. I'm so excited about B&E, the work that has been done and the businesses that are being birthed. And so I just want to thank you again for your mission and your obedience and what you've created and allowing me to be a part of that.
Absolutely. And I appreciate you for being a part of it because, as I always have said, a lot of people are, and I get it, I am the face of the business, but the way I've always ran B&E or Black Nurse Entrepreneurs is this is your business as well. This is a community that I have created, true enough. I always wanted everybody to have the opportunity to be seen and to be heard and be a part of it. And so I'm really only as good as the community is, the people that have been in the community that have consistently given back to other people and allowed us to just kind of bounce each other, bounce resources and knowledge off of each other. So I'm really only as good as you guys have been to me. So I really appreciate it. So if
Thank
there's nothing else, I'm going to close us off for today. And like I said, I'll have her contact information available to everybody in the biography section of the podcast here. Okay. So that's it for today. Make sure that you're following us, Black Nurse Entrepreneurs, across all social media platforms. And we have an app now. So make sure you download the app. Make sure that you subscribe to our podcast too, because we have a lot of great, great episodes. Join our Facebook group, visit our website. All of that information is also located in the biography section of this podcast here. So until next time, I want you guys to remember that we do not follow trends, but we are the trend. Thank you guys and have a great night.
Thank you.